Is China concerned about the Uyghurs? And let me explain why I asked that. When Syria was knocked over, when the government of Syria fell, many of the people who helped overthrow Syria was not Syrians, like meaning they came from other parts, extremists, terrorists, came from other parts of other countries in order to basically invade and overthrow that government, regardless of whether they thought they could do it in the beginning. They overthrew the Syrian government. The Uyghurs that were there were effectively saying, we have to overthrow this government, and now we're going back to China, and China's next. And I saw that video, and I thought to myself, I heard a speaker, I can't remember the guy, I think he was Chinese, but he was making this argument that, China had to deal with a terrorism issue, and the terrorism issue was just so happened taking place in that region. And that the moment that they tried to change those people's mind, meaning denazify the terrorists in this case, that the U.S. starts howling that they're somehow doing something to the Uyghurs, that they're committing some kind of genocide to the Uyghurs. Now, nobody has proven this at all. And this has just been something that they've been outing because people have been throwing the label that the U.S. has been literally backing a genocide in Gaza that everybody with their own eyes can see. Meaning in the China case, you have to take our word for it. In the American case, you could see it with your own eyes. You see what they're doing. You see the depravity that our tax dollars are paying for. And so when I saw the Uyghurs effectively saying, well, we're going back to China after literally overthrowing a government and killing Christians or people who didn't necessarily follow their belief, Alawites, etc., it made me think, I guess that guy was right. What is China thinking about this? I mean, I would imagine they have to be paying attention to the Syria conflict, especially considering some of their citizens are involved in overthrowing the government. Is there any concern that those terrorists are coming back to China? Give me your thoughts on this. This was one of the questions I wanted to ask, and I forgot to ask last time. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I think you're absolutely right. First, there is, quote unquote, no genocide of the Uyghurs in China. Their population has grown, sixfold? And their life expectancy has grown 250%. Those are not the numbers that you get when you have a genocide. The Uyghurs in Xinjiang were exempt from the one-child policy. How many children does Xi Jinping have? He has one child. He was held to the one-child policy like everybody else, like they held all of their leaders. There are no exceptions. And on the other hand, the Uyghurs, being an ethnic minority, were allowed to have 2, 3, sometimes more children, which is why their birth rate is twice the level of the Han majority, and why their population has grown sixfold. So these are just extraordinary mendacities. And they come out of, the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, which is a deep state think tank designed to undermine China. They come out of the words of Adrian Zenz, who was then featured prominently in all the Western media, in particular the BBC. And then he trickled down into quote unquote the left the left media as well. Amy Goodman gave him several interviews asking a question about this guy he's like a cotton mather from the 17th century. I mean, he believes, that Jews and gays are going to go to hell, and that women should be kept at home and not allowed to work outside. This is the kind of, extraordinary, extremist view that he holds. But Amy Goodman just gives him a free pass, doesn't ask him about any of those things, and then just repeats all of his lies. And then this becomes part of the progressive discourse as well. So, they simply acted as relay stations for State Department propaganda. Nobody has been able to point to a single body in the quote unquote Xinjiang genocide, as opposed to Palestine, which you see is an ongoing atrocity, an ongoing genocide. You can see the bodies every single day, children starving, amputated, killed every single day, babies dying, and at the same time, the US has the audacity to claim that this is not a genocide, and that what's happening in Xinjiang, which is a program of development and benefit, is some kind of genocide. We're living in an insane world, a crazy upside down world. And anybody who believes these lies, you have to understand, is, either shilling as a propagandist, or is, completely out of their minds. That said, the Chinese have said for a very, very long time that the US has been trying to radicalize the Uyghurs in Xinjiang to create a theocratic state inside of China. Now, China is a multi-ethnic state. There are 55 ethnic minorities. All of them have equal consideration under Chinese law. They all own land. They all have additional privileges. They all have legislative representation. Even the smallest ethnic minorities. Some of these ethnic minorities, excuse me, are 2,000 or 3,000 people, and still they have legislative representation at the highest, at the People's Congress. And so there's a kind of extraordinary, program of inclusion and representation that China represents. And China does not have a history of repressing its ethnic minorities. Certainly the PRC doesn't do that. How do I know that? Because I am a Korean, and Koreans are an ethnic minority in China. If you go to the Korean parts of China, you'll see that Korean culture is perfectly preserved. People live, good lives. They feel both Chinese and secure in their own cultural traditions, as opposed to anywhere else in the world. You go to Japan as a Korean, Koreans in Japan will not tell you that they are Korean. They will hide their identity, because being Korean in Japan is worse than being black in the United States. I kid you not.
Really?
I kid you not. Yes, I kid you not.
So,
Yeah.